No, we found him. Not the remote yet. I think are you? See that? Okay.
Okay.
That's our cue. We're on.
Okay, your head is cut off.
My head is cut off. It doesn't feel like.
Can you squat as low as, or go down as low as Toby does?
There we go.
You're gonna have to tip the camera, so loosen that and then tip the camera.
Now
We
you've
have
got
to
the-
loosen that, the back one, it's the back one, John, that you twist to loosen up that knob.
There
Oh,
we
you
go.
got-
Okay.
Nice.
How's
that?
Yeah, tighten the big one, yeah, that's it.
Good.
Is that the left and right? I can do a little left.
Oh, there, that's good.
Okay.
You're
on.
Okay. Okay, we're on for real this time, and I have a whole head, I guess.
Yeah.
That's always a good thing. Well, I want to welcome everybody. We've got looks like 4, 8, 9, 10. There's 11, 12 of us here if you count Zenith, our favorite pet here. But welcome, and welcome to the folks on Zoom. I think there's about a dozen of you out there. If anybody who's out there in Zoom land would like to tell a story tonight, in addition to those that have either already contacted me or are on tap to tell a story, please send us a message or during the break, chime in, get our attention, and we'll get you on the list to tell. So we've got a handful of tellers. Tonight, our theme, at least for the leadoff folks, is called A Tapestry of Asian Tales. And should be an interesting tale. We've got our opening teller in just a little bit, and then our featured tellers they're telling me they're going to run close to 40 minutes. So it's going to take up most of the first hour. So after that, we'll take a little bit of a break and then come back and start into our story swap. And of course, those stories are open to any subject. They don't necessarily have to stay on theme with the Tapestry of Asian Tales. So this is being recorded and it'll show up on our website, a week or two after the recording. So if you want to go back and look at your story and see how you did, we'll have that as a resource to help you out there. There's a whole bunch of announcements, but I'm going to save those for later on. For the people who are here, if you'll sign in there's a little clipboard going around. I think most of you have signed in. We certainly encourage you to do that. So if there's any new folks, we can get your email address and get us on the list and hopefully recruit some new members. So let's get started with our opening teller. Let me find my notes here so I get this exactly right. Oh, there we go. Our opening teller is Kathy Thomas, and she's going to be on Zoom tonight to tell us a story about that. Now, Kathy grew up in several different places around the Far East. I think she told me she spent some time, and this is when she was really tiny, and some of these places she doesn't have much memory of, but others, as she grew older, she did. She's been in India, she's been in Korea, she spent kind of what she considers some of her formative years in Japan, I think about age 4 into or age 6 up into her middle school years. So she kind of considers that home in some ways. And one of her favorite things to do was to read the Stars and Stripes. And the Stars and Stripes is the newspaper that's published for the service people that are over there, but it's also widely circulated amongst the folks who read English and like that kind of news. But one of the things about the Stars and Stripes back then is they used to publish stories in there, and so that kind of planted the seed for her love of storytelling in that. So tonight, she's going to tell us about a feudal era judge. And this is a man who lived back in 1677 in Japan. His name is Ooka Tada-san Ichizumi no Kami. I probably got some of that right, but in Japan. And at first he was kind of a lower level judge and deciding some cases. Then he came upon this one case. He was deciding some sort of a land dispute between this powerful, politically well-connected person and another person who was kind of an ordinary person. And he made such a wise decision when he settled the case that the magistrate, the people in Tokyo, Edo at that time, were impressed and elevated him to be the magistrate in Tokyo. And the magistrate is almost equivalent to a king. He's kind of like the mayor, the chief of police, the judge, the fire marshal, all of those civic functions reside in this person. So this is a story from Japan. So Kathy, if you'll take it away.
Okay, so as Jerry said, when I was a little girl, I lived in Japan. And I used to enjoy stories in the English language newspaper about this judge from olden times, Ooka. And his stories were interesting, not just because of the cleverness of his verdict, but also the unusual cases he heard. This is a case of the corpse convicted of robbery. Now, lying there before you is the corpse of a beautiful young woman. And here's the irate innkeeper punishing the corpse. Take that and that and that, you ungrateful girl. And here's the old woman who saw the irate innkeeper beating the corpse of the beautiful young girl. Oh, my poor daughter. And here is the minister, the policeman who heard the cries of the old woman and describing the innkeeper beating the woman. And he took them all to Lord Ooka's court. After all, I'm only doing my duty, sir. Well, so let's listen in on the case. Oh, Lord Ooka, I have been cruelly mistreated. Surely you will agree that it's proper to punish a corpse. Well, I have tried statues. I have settled the case of the attempted murder of a ghost. I have even determined the price of a smell. But punishing a corpse seems like a particularly unproductive thing to do. Oh, but Lord Ooka, you will agree there are circumstances, and then there are other circumstances. Well, that's true. State your case, and I'll decide what needs to be done. Well, it all began with a daughter of that old woman. That girl was the most ungrateful girl. Do you realize how ungrateful women can be? Like all men, I'm an authority on the subject. Well, in that case, I don't understand why I've even been brought here. This old woman complains. This incompetent policeman, who my taxes pay for, drags me into your court. I just don't understand. Well, sir, I would be the first to say that a man must be able to beat his women. I mean, how else can he control them? But your honorable honor, this woman was dead. Did you kill her? Oh, no, sir. A gentle soul like me could never kill anyone. No, I am just the poor owner of an even poorer inn. I bought this girl. I bought her from her father. Not only that, but I've paid for her instruction in the social graces. I bought her beautiful clothes, all that she could delight my guests at the inn. And of course, I'd added the price of those additional items to the initial purchase price that she would have to work off. Well, personally, I've never held with those dealings, but in our time, it is common practice. It's entirely legal. Oh, yes, sir, a humble man like me. But I am honest, which is more than I can say for this ungrateful girl. Before she could work to pay off the debt that she incurred, this thief steals from me. She kills herself. Oh, Lord Ooka, my daughter did not kill herself to harm this awful man. No, she died because her lover, Kankichi Izumiya, was wrongfully beheaded. Nonsense. Anyone who would steal a legally purchased life is too selfish to care about anybody but herself. I demand that I be allowed to continue punishing this corpse, because otherwise all my other ungrateful girls will take the same sneaky method to cheat me by killing themselves. This is a case which has moved from the living to the dead, and punishing a corpse is about as useless as trying to capture the wind. But, sir, I have no doubt that she will be punished frightfully in the underworld. But you know, my girls are godless creatures. I mean, they don't even believe in hell. And I must have a punishment which is properly frightens my girls in this time. You will have proper justice will be served. Now you realize that the disposition of one's cremated ashes guides one's soul in the afterlife? Well, the old priests say it does. And therefore, I decree that this corpse is to be cremated and her ashes are to be mixed with those of a truly terrible criminal, so that for all eternity, her soul will be locked with his, experiencing all the punishments which he receives. Oh, Lord Ooka, that is truly a frightening punishment for all eternity. Oh, that will scare my girls into proper obedience for sure. But don't you think that old woman should be punished also for complaining about me? I do. Now you go back to your inn, but know that she is condemned to be the very person who must mix those ashes of her beloved daughter with a truly terrible criminal of my choosing. Oh, you are as wise as men say you are. I know. In fact, I may even be wiser than you think. Now you know. In these times, and by our laws, your daughter did steal from that innkeeper. And so it's only right that she must be punished. Now, you said her lover's name was Kankichi Izumiya? Oh, yes, and a finer lad there never was. You know, he did not commit those terrible crimes for which he was punished. No, he was convicted on lying witnesses' statements. Well, I must say I have heard of the case, and I have heard of other people who speak as kindly of him as you do. But it would be unseemly for me to criticize my fellow judges. No, although I might say that had the case been heard in my court, the verdict would have been different. But nonetheless, the court has determined that he is a terrible criminal. And therefore, that's what he is. Oh, no, he was a fine man. Silence, woman. I say again, he was a terrible criminal, and therefore it is with his ashes that your daughters must be mixed, so that for all eternity, these two are locked in a lover's embrace. Oh, that makes my old heart so happy, and I know it makes my beloved daughter and Kankichi's souls happy also. Yes, and it makes me happy also. And you recall, our friend the innkeeper was also pleased. And though it may sound a bit unseemly, I must say that a judgment that satisfies the judge and the judged, the living and the dead, is surely a case of justice well served.
Am I on?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much, Kathy. That was a great story of coming from Judge Oka, who was so wise indeed. Well, I want to thank you all for coming to tonight's meeting, South Sound Story Guild. Because tonight, our feature tellers will be celebrating Asian American Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander Month. Or AAPI for short. Now, we have 4 tellers from the Asian American Storytellers in Action who will be sharing their stories. Now, this particular storytelling group, one of the main goals of this group is to bring people together so we can explore each other's cultures and traditions to develop a better understanding for everyone. So we hope you enjoyed this tapestry of Asian tales. You too, Zena. Shh. Our first teller, I'm so happy to present is Bowen Lee. Now, Bowen made this big move from California to Tumwater with her two charming, cute dogs. Now, she's been on stage both nationally and internationally. Bowen conducts workshops for educators and has performed in national and international and regional events. Now, I've heard Bowen's stories dealing with climate change and environmental issues, and they are absolutely fantastic. She is quite an educator. So please welcome Bowen Lee.
Thank you, everyone. Can you see my hands?
Yes.
Okay, great. Should I stand up here?
No.
You're fine.
I'm just trying. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Toby, for that introduction. So this is not environmental, although it could be. It has to do with a different environment. This is a Dai, this tale is from the Dai people of Yunnan province in China. There were two friends, and they did everything together. What one of them had, he shared with the other. And they were so united in everything, inseparable. But one of them took very ill and died. And so much in grief. The other died soon after of the same illness. These two were reborn. They were reborn into a phoenix with two heads, two wings, four legs, essentially two birds united as one at the waist. And they lived, this bird, the two-headed phoenix, lived in a great forest. A hunter went into the forest and saw this amazing, magnificent, incredible bird, took aim, but saw that when one bird took food, it shared it with the other. The hunter was so moved by this, he could not capture that bird. But he went and told everybody that he knew about it. And this news went to a king. Now this king wanted nothing more than to be wealthy, famous, and powerful. And so having this bird, owning it, would make him wealthy, famous, and powerful. So he told his gameskeepers, go into that forest and get that bird. The gameskeepers all went out, but because the birds' heads would inform each other and they were super vigilant, they could never capture the bird. It was always just out of reach. So one of the gameskeepers took to treachery. There was a tree with especially beautiful fruit, and the gameskeeper made snares and set them among the fruit. So when the two-headed phoenix saw this magnificent tree and the promise of such wonderful, delicious fruit, it went down and one of its legs was caught in a snare, and so it was captured. It was put into a beautiful, elegant, gilded cage. And the king was so delighted. He fed the bird all of this beautiful, delicious, wonderful food. And the birds would share it with each other. And after a time, this upset the king. He saw how much affection the bird had for each of its head, how the two heads had affection for each other. And that made the king envious because no one had affection for this king. They only were afraid of him. The king says, I've got to break this up. So he stopped feeding one of the birds, one of the heads, but the other head would feed the other. And so he could not deny one without the other sharing. So eventually what he did is he stopped feeding them all together. None of the heads got food. And the two heads, the birds started to starve. But even in their suffering, they shared their suffering. And the king could not stand it. He said to his advisors, if any one of you has a plan to separate this bird and make it two instead of one, I will give that person half of my country. Well, the advisors got to it right away. They started to plot and plan. And one of them noticed that at certain times, the two heads faced away from each other. He came with a plan to the king, and the king said, that's a good plan. So when once the two heads were facing away from each other, the king went to the left head and whispered so that the right head could not hear. Blah, blah, blah. Immigrants are criminals, blah, blah, blah. The king said something to you. Well, it didn't make any sense. It was nothing. The right head was hurt that the left head would not share with him, but he let it go. And then once again, when the heads were turned away from each other, the king went to the left head and whispered, blah, 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 diversity, inclusion, and equity are a waste of time, blah, blah, blah. The king said something to you again. Yes, but it's not worth repeating. It's just senseless. Doesn't make any sense whatsoever. It's just nonsense. But the king told you something. Yes, but you really don't want to hear it. And now the right hand did not trust the left hand. Once again, the two heads faced away from each other. And the king whispered to the left head, blah, blah, blah. Whoever doesn't agree with the king is ruining the country, blah, blah, blah. What did the king tell you? That I can't, it's so senseless. None of it makes any sense. It's just nonsense. You just forget about it. Well, but the king told you something. What was it? Is he trying to kill me? Was he trying to get rid of me? No, nothing like that. Well, then tell me, what is it? Well, all right. The king says, blah, blah, blah. Immigrants are criminals, blah, blah, blah. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is a waste of time, blah, blah, blah. Anyone who doesn't agree with the king is ruining the country. See what I mean? It doesn't make any sense. It's nonsense. But the king said it. It must mean something. Well, what could it mean? It's just, no, it's stupid. Are you calling me stupid? No, not at all. no, these words, they don't make sense. They have to make sense. It's the king who said them. And on and on and on, the birds argued with each other. They fought and they fought, and they got so angry, so worked up. In a fury, they split apart at the waist. They were now two birds with one head, one wing that could not fly, and two legs. And the two birds were miserable, which is what the king wanted after all. Yes. The advisor said, I would like to have my half of the country now. And the king said, in due time, it's just, there's a process. It'll, just hang on and wait. It'll come to you. But the advisor never got any piece of land. And the gameskeeper who caught the bird in the first place got absolutely nothing. Because this king, once he had divided and caused misery, he had gotten what he wanted. And that's all that he cared about.
Oh, thank you, Bowen. Wow, what a story. Kings, and what they want, and how they can split people's creatures apart. I am pleased to invite Eleanor Clement Glantz to tell a story tonight. Now, she's not a stranger to our guild. She has told several times great folk tales. Now, Eleanor delights children in all the tales that she tells to the kids, and these are stories from around the world. She's a volunteer storyteller at the prestigious Asian Art Museum in San Francisco, and she is also a volunteer storytelling teacher who has just finishing up a class of a group of docent storytellers who will be telling certain tales about artifacts in that museum. Her Black and Filipino ethnicity has brought many personal stories to events nationally and in the Bay Area. Now, Eleanor, she contributes to the Asian American Storytopia YouTube channel, which are stories and activities for kids who are, kindergarten to grade 5, even up to adults. And actually, there are many of us who are involved in this particular project. So please go to Asian American Storytopia, subscribe and like. Please welcome Eleanor.
Hello, I'm so happy to be here. Just one second. Okay. I'm so happy to be here. And tonight I'd like to tell you a story from the Philippines. The Philippines is a country that's made up of 7,000 islands in the Pacific Ocean. It's about 500 miles from Vietnam. Now, on one of those islands, there's a mountain that's surrounded by a lush rainforest. And in that rainforest are a number of villages. But in this one village, there lived a mean, horrible, terrible, and terrifying giant. He was humongous. If you look up in the room that you're in, do you see that ceiling? If this giant were walking across the ceiling, he would be leaving a dirty, greasy mark all down the ceiling because he's that tall. He was so humongous with dirty, filthy hair, and he had a beard that was down to his waist that bugs like to live in. They called him Odon the giant. Now, Odon the giant loved, among all the things in the world, what he loved the best was to crush and to stomp, bump, bump, bump on anything that was smaller than he was. Houses, people, children, animals. The villagers were so terrified they would stay in their homes so that the giant would not see them. Animals did not come out of their places where they lived to forage for food. Birds flew as quickly and as high as they could so that Odon, the giant, could not capture them. Well, one of those little birds was a little pecoy bird. Look at your thumb. This little pecoy bird was no bigger than your thumb. It was beautiful. It had feathers of pink and yellow and red and blue and purple. And when he fluttered his wings, it was like a rainbow was there. Well, Odon had been trying to capture that little bird for many, many months. And one day, when that little pecoy bird had barely escaped Odon, the giant's hand again, she had had enough. She decided to make a plan and to invite 4 of her favorite friends together so that they could make a plan to rid the village of Odon, the giant. So she invited a little mosquito. She invited her friend, the bedbug. She invited this little orange crab with big pincers, sa, 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 and also a little slippery eel. Whoop! Those 4 friends with the little pecoy bird met to make a plan. They whispered, they thought together, and finally they came up with a plan that they thought would really work, would really rid the village once and for all of Odon, the giant. The 5 friends met by the beach and found a little half coconut shell. 4 of the friends jumped into the shell, and the little slippery eel, who could swim, pushed the little coconut shell into the river and swam beside it. Well, those little animals, they rode whoosh, 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 all day long. It was the evening before they got close to the beach, which would take them over to Odon, the giant's home. The beautiful sky was being painted with beautiful colors of lavender and pink and orange. And they knew that they did not have much time before it got dark and Odon, the giant, would come. So they hurried through the rainforest over to the hut where Odon, the giant, lived. Now, in this village, most people lived with in a bamboo hut with a grass-thatched roof. It was on high stilts, like most of the villagers. The hut was on very high stilts, so that when the monsoon's rains came, they would wash through and under the homes and not wash the homes away. Now, you know, this hut was huge to accommodate the giant, and the bamboo ladder that took you up to the porch and over to the door was very high. But those little creatures, they climbed and they wrapped themselves around each other. They lifted each other through, and they wound themselves up and they flew. They got up that huge bamboo ladder until they were on the porch. They went to the front of Odon, the giant's door, and the door was huge and massive, but they pushed until a tiny little crack was open just enough for the little birds, the little friends, to come in. Each of them squeezed through the door, and then they sat in the places that they had decided upon in their plan. The little mosquito sat right on the back of the Odon, the giant's rocking chair. The little crab found a basin of water on the sink, on the kitchen table, and sploosh, went into that basin and waited patiently. The little pecoy bird went over to the fireplace and found out where the cool embers were and wiggled down into those cool embers right at the front, and then pulled the embers all up to him so that only a tiny, tiny view of his eyes peeked out. And the bedbug? Well, of course, the bedbug went over to the bed of Odon the giant, pushed aside the big mosquito net, and burrowed under the covers. The little eel, ooh, eel went over and was right by the side of Odon the giant's door. He wrapped himself very, very tightly and waited. The 5 friends waited patiently. And soon it got dark, and they heard bump, bump, bump. They heard Odon the giant coming. He went up the ladder, bump, 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 and onto the porch. And then he pushed his door open, boom, and into his home. And he sat down in his chair, his favorite rocking chair, and just sighed. Oh, because he had had such a big day crushing and stomping, bump, 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 everything that was smaller than he was. As he was rocking in the rocking chair, trying to rest, who was on the rocking chair? Yes, it was the mosquito. The mosquito took off and tried to bite the Odon the giant right in his ear. Oh! The mosquito came around, bit him in his other ear. Oh, cried Odon the giant. And that mosquito just wouldn't stop. Ow, ow. Just biting Odon the giant every place that he could. Finally, the giant said, "What is biting me?" and ran over to his bed. He threw open the mosquito net, and he ran into his bed and closed it tightly. The mosquito tried to follow him, couldn't get past the net. But who was in the bed waiting for Odon the giant? Yes, it was the little bedbug. And that bedbug knew it was his turn, and he started to bite Odon the giant all over. Oh, pop, 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 pop. Something is biting me. And he threw open the mosquito net, and he ran over to the fireplace. He reached for one of his candles, and he was going to light it with one of the embers in the back of the fireplace. But who was in the fireplace? It was little Pecoy Bird. And the little Pecoy Bird, as the big head of Odon the giant hovered over him, she started to flicker her wings. And all the ashes started going into Odon the giant's eyes. Oh, it's cutting in my eyes. And he ran over to the basin of water he knew was on his kitchen table, and sploosh, he put his whole head in to wash his eyes of the ashes that had gotten in them. But who was waiting for him in the basin of water? Yes, in the bottom was the little crab, sa, 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 and that little crab grabbed the lip of Odon the giant and squeezed as hard as he could. Ow, my lip, it hurts. Odon the giant said, "I have to get out of this house. It's haunted." Odon the giant started to rush over to his door. And who was by the door? Yes, it was the little eel. But the little eel had unwound and stretched as far as he could across the threshold of the door. When Odon the giant slipped on the little eel, he went up in the sky and then down, and thudded on the ground really hard. The ground shook, and those tremors were felt all the way down to the village. Well, Odon the giant didn't stop there. He was terrified. He jumped up and started to run as far away from his home as he could. Bump, 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 bump. All of the little creatures ran onto the porch and they started to watch and they saw Odon the giant running. Bump, 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 bump. Soon they couldn't see Odon the giant at all. They started high-fiving each other. They were so proud of themselves. And they thought, that Odon the giant is never going to bother our village and our friends ever again. And do you know what? He never did.
Thanks, Eleanor. That's one of my favorite stories, Odon the Giant. And it reminds me that you don't have to be big to conquer a giant. Thanks, Eleanor. Our next teller is Rupa. And Rupa Moen is a storyteller from Alamo, California. And she's also a volunteer storyteller at the prestigious Asian Art Museum in San Francisco, and actually works with the same program that Eleanor does at the museum. Now, I've been to this museum and it is quite impressive, just listening to their program. Rupa has expanded her repertoire to include greatest stories, which weave tells about her growing up years in South India. She is also a Chautauqua scholar, which is quite an accomplishment, and has portrayed Kasturba Gandhi, the wife of Mahatma Gandhi. Rupa was a feature teller at the Women's Storytelling Festival in 2024. And Rupa landed on US soil in 1981. And she will share with us the story of Kala Bagai, who came to America in 1915 and paved the way for future immigrants. Please welcome Rupa.
Namaste, everyone. Good evening. It was September 15th, 1915, and Korea, a large steamboat, was making its way to Angel Island to dock there. And when the passengers got off, they were mostly from East Asia, mostly men. But there was one unusual family from India. There was the father dressed in a suit, 3 little boys, and a lady dressed in a sari, wearing a diamond nose ring. That was Kala Bagai. And this young family was here to escape colonial rule in India. And they wanted to make America their new home and live happily ever after. Did they? Well, for the next few days, they were in detention on Angel Island. And Kala sat there and wondered what lay ahead for her. She had lived a very sheltered life in India. She was married off at 11 to a 12-year-old, which was customary those days in Punjab, where she grew up. And once she went to her mother-in-law's house, she left behind her childhood. She was trained in managing the servants and doing some domestic things, and of course, raising the children. Her first one came when she was barely 16 years old. But her husband, who was well educated, unlike Kala, was getting really tired of British rule. He joined an overseas party called the Gadar Party that was from abroad, trying to fight for Indian independence and supporting the freedom struggle from afar. And his friends in the United States asked him to come and join them. He thought it was a great opportunity, especially after he inherited a sizable fortune after the demise of his father. So here he was with over $25,000 in gold. Hence, the immigration officers were not so strict. After a few days of interrogation, they let the family in. And Kala set her feet on beautiful San Francisco. This was 1915. And remember, the year of the Great Exposition, where the city had been rebuilt after the terrible earthquake and the fire of 1906. And what was not to love? The beautiful beaches that Kala had never seen, having lived in interior British India, in the Punjab. Well, there was greenery, the weather was perfect. And she thought this would be a great place for her and her growing family. Well, they lived in San Francisco initially, and her husband tried his hand at running some stores. There was a print shop that he opened, a stationery shop, a general store after that. But in 1917, they wanted to buy their own home, and they found the perfect home in Berkeley. And the family went there with all their possessions loaded on trucks. And guess what? They were shocked to see that the doors and windows were barred. They were not allowed to enter their own home because the white neighbors did not think that they should live there. What was this, thought Kala? Is this the welcome I'm going to be getting? Is this the new country that I so much wanted to be part of? Very disappointed and disheartened, they went back to San Francisco and lived in an apartment above one of their stores. And for the next few years, things started looking up again because her husband was able to get naturalized. And they thought, well, now we can run our own business the way we want to. We can again try to buy a home. We can live like Americans. But wait a minute. In 1923, a very harsh act was passed against Asians, especially South Asians, that they had to give up their citizenship. And everything was snatched away from them. The Bagais could no longer own property or even run a business unless they had like a front man, a Caucasian. And that was turning out to be really messy. Meanwhile, the children and the family were trying to get really assimilated. Kala was blessed to have a good German family that helped her with the kids. So they were like, you know, they forgot about their Indian roots and they became little American boys and even learned German from the German family. And Kala herself, who was totally illiterate, did not know a word of English, was now picking up a few things, going to night ESL classes and such, while her husband was trying to sort things out. He was, of course, very involved with the Gadar party, trying to help the independence movement and even printing things, anti-British flyers and stuff in his print shop. But in 1928, he said goodbye to Kala and told her that he was going to a meeting in San Jose. And a few hours later, they found his body in the hotel room. He had been pushed to the limit and had decided to end his life. He, being a very intelligent man, had planned this. He sent a letter to the San Francisco Examiner listing why he was doing this. He said that he felt like he was in a gilded cage and he was stateless. He couldn't go back to British India because he had fought them, and he was not welcome in America anymore. What was he to do? He had detailed instructions to Kala about how she should manage his assets so that the children would get a good education. And that was it. Kala was left a widow, not even 35 years of age, with 3 sons on her hands. I must say that though the country was hostile, her neighbors and friends really helped her out. And she was able to carry on. She was able to make a decent life for herself. She ended up sending these kids to top-notch schools like Stanford and USC and even MIT. And she did it all with a new strength and resilience that she didn't know she had. And of course, she learned to speak fluently in English. She gave up her sari and her nose ring and her bindi for Western clothing in order to assimilate. And she even got remarried, which was unusual for Indian women. Her husband's friend, another member of the Gadar party, came forward and wanted to marry her. And she did that after she took her older sons back to India to find brides. So that would not get in the way of their future. After that, she married him and they moved to LA. And Kala was very intelligent, though she did not have a high level of education. It appears that she managed her assets really well. She bought a 4-plex there in LA so she could have her 3 sons live with her, and which they did at some point or the other. She learned to be really independent. In fact, that's what she loved about being in this country, that she could be independent, and that's why she didn't go back to India after she lost her husband. And things were changing. There was an act passed in 1946 that gave some relief to naturalized citizens. And later, the doors really opened up in the 1960s, and she became a US citizen. And her sons could blossom in this country. And over the years, Kala became a role model for fresh immigrants coming into Southern California. In fact, they started referring to her as Mother India because she would welcome them with open arms. She would feed everybody. She loved doing that. And her sons got married, they had children, and every weekend she would have a big feast of Punjabi food with a lot of homemade rotis and side dishes. She even cooked meat without ever tasting it because she was a strict vegetarian. And Kala got involved with all kinds of community activities. She joined the Indian American Women's Club. She started playing tennis. She started traveling the world, and nothing could stop her anymore. Of course, the sadness of her early tragedies always haunted her. And she told her grandchildren some of these stories and her struggles, but she would soon change, and she would become happy and welcoming and urge them to eat more and more and more until they felt they were going to burst. Well, Kala lived a long life. She died when she was 90 years old in 1983. But she was a trailblazer as one of the earliest Indian Hindu women to come and settle down in this country and make a good life for herself. So to celebrate Mother's Day and AAPI month, I would like to honor her by saying Namaste, Jayaji. Jayaji is how everybody referred to her, which is an honorific way of saying auntie. So Namaste, Jayaji, and may your story live on forever.
Oh, Rupa, thank you so much. Alabagai, I mean, definitely paved the way for immigrants, and also that America still is the land of opportunity. We just have to hang in there and be strong about it. So thank you very much, Rupa. But there's one last story, if that's okay with you folks.
Toby, one small thing.
yeah.
I forgot to mention that in 2020, all the activists in the Bay Area, they petitioned and they got a street named after her in Berkeley. It's called Kalabagai Way, the same Berkeley that had kicked her out in 1970 was now honoring her.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for that info. Isn't that interesting? I mean, that's happened other times too, with regards to people about renaming, and they get renamed again. So this is the last story, and then you guys can go for intermission. So I have you right here. I feel this is a story my grandmother and mother would really enjoy. And now I appreciate this story so much more. It is called The Wise Old Woman. Mukashi, long ago in Japan, on the western side of Japan, excuse me, was a village. And this village was ruled by a young, arrogant, cruel lord. I want my village to be full of youth. I have no use for old people. In fact, they take up space, and I am going to make a decree. An executive order, if you would like to know. This decree will have all people who are 70 years and older go up the mountain to die. Well, of course, the villagers were very concerned, but he was a cruel lord. And soon, yes, the village became full of youth, young people. There were hardly any old people around. In the village, there was a young man, Saburo. He was a farmer, and he lived with his mother, who he loved dearly. Now, his mother's birthday was coming up, and she was going to be 71. The thing is, though, the village had strict records of the birth date of everybody who lived there. So he knew there was really no escape. But he dragged his feet. And soon, when he would work on the farm, his friends would say, Saburo-ne, isn't your mother's otanjobi birthday? Hasn't it passed already? So desho ne? Yes, it has. Saburo's mother was very concerned. Saburo, you must take me to the mountain. And it's the law. Tomorrow you will do so. And so that day came. And his mother, Okasan, got on the back of Saburo, piggyback style. And there he trudged up the mountain. And soon the path became narrow, and the trees became clustered so tight that you could not hear the wind or the birds chirping. But then Saburo heard this snapping of branches, and he turned back and saw his mother was breaking the branches off. And he said, Okasan, what are you doing? Saburo, after you lead me up in the mountain, I want to make sure that you know how to get back to the village safely. Well, that was it for Saburo. he put his mother down and he said, Okasan, I cannot take you up to the mountain to die. No, no, we will figure this out. And he took her back home. And underneath the kitchen, he dug a huge hole, a cave, a big enough room to have a futon, a mattress on the floor, a table and a lamp. And that's where his mother lived. Saburo would still go and farm as if nothing had happened, as if his mother was up in the mountains to die. So he was never questioned. At a nearby village was another lord, Lord Higa. Oh, he loved his samurai sword. He was very, very cruel, even more scary than the young lord in that other village. I want to take over that village. I want to own everything. So I'm going to take over that village. I'm going to give them a chance. I love puzzles. I'm going to give them a puzzle. Advisor, you tell them this. If they can make 3 pieces of rope into ash and still have the shape of the rope, they will be spared. And so the advisor did that. He went off and saw the young lord and told them the puzzle. Wise man, come, come, come. What do you think? Oh, we don't know, sire. Baka, stupid. What do you mean you don't know? Go ask the villagers. So the wise men did. And the villagers all kind of shrugged their heads. Impossible. Saburo came home and he was giving food for his mother, pickles and rice. And his mother looked at Saburo. Saburo, what is the matter? You look so sad. Oh, Kazan. If we do not solve this puzzle, Lord Higa will take over our village. And you know how cruel he is. What is the puzzle? Oh, we have to take 3 rope and turn them into ash so they have the same shape as a rope. So easy. You take the rope, you soak it in salt water, make sure it is completely dry, and then you set fire to it and it will become ash, but it will retain the same shape as that rope. So there's a man. So Saburo quickly went and he told the young lord the solution. The young lord thought, that is very good. Here's the bag of gold. And then the solution was brought to Lord Higa. They solved that puzzle? I'm going to give him another one. Okay, let's see if they can solve this puzzle. Take this hollow branch that has 7 turns to it. There's an opening and an ending, and they must thread it with a piece of silk from the beginning, go through the curves until it is at the end. They will not be able to solve that. So the advisor goes back to the young lord. Wise men, well, yes, I don't know what. Take it to the villagers and tell them 2 bags of gold if they can solve it. So the announcement was made, but the villagers, they just kind of shrugged their shoulders. Yeah, that is too difficult. Saburo then sees his mother. Saburo, what is it now? Okasan, this puzzle we must do, this hollow branch with 7 curves and threading the silk thread through it, impossible. Saburo, it is so easy. This is what you do. You have an opening and an ending. You take some sugar water, put it on the end of that branch. You take an ant and you tie the silk thread on the leg of that ant. Let the ant go through the hollow log and it will go back and forth because it will be trying to smell where that sugar is, and it will reach the end. And there you have the silk thread that has gone through that hollow wrench. So again, Saburo goes up and he gives a solution to the young lord. You are so clever, so smart. 2 bags of gold. And the solution was brought to Lord Higa, again, who was like, puzzled. I don't understand. They are so smart there. One last puzzle, because we know 3 is the lucky number. One last puzzle. And if they can solve this one, I will leave them alone. They need to make a drum that makes sound without beating it. I've got them. So the advisor goes to the young lord, tells him about the puzzle. Of course, the wise men cannot solve it. The villagers cannot solve it. Saburo goes to his mother. Saburo ne, 難しいじゃないでしょうね. It's so easy. We will make a drum. On one side of the drum, we will have paper. We will put a bumblebee inside and then cover the other side with paper. Bong, 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 bong. That bee will travel and make a sound. And you are not hitting it. Well, Kazan, you are so smart. And off he goes to tell the young lord. The young lord is just aghast. He can't believe it. Definitely, this will solve our problem. You are a genius, Saburo-san. Then Saburo took a big sigh. Sire, I must confess, I did not come up with these solutions. It was my mother, who was 71 years old. I did not take her up to the mountain to die. And the young lord, he just sat there. Of course, Saburo was frightened. Blessed be the Buddha, you did not take your mother up to the mountain, for she is so wise. I'm taking that decree, executive order, erase, delete. From now on, everyone can live in this village. We need the elders for their wise and their experience. We need them. And so the solution was taken to Lord Higa, who was just shocked. This village, everybody in that village must be so wise. I'm leaving him alone. No, I will not conquer them. They can live in peace. And so to this day in Western Japan, this little village, it is known to be the village of the wise ones. And Saburo and his mother lived there peacefully. Thank you.
These are great stories. What a way to start the start our story swap. But lots of wisdom and gosh, tales from all over. Judge Oka kind of resonated a little bit with me because this past week I had to serve on a jury and was amazed sometimes with the things that the judge said and the way he guided us. So a lot of wisdom there, and all of these very strong women finding their way through to solve problems and pave the way for other people. Really fascinating. So thank you for getting us off to a great start. We appreciate our tellers. Well, I'm looking at my cell phone clock and it just flipped over to 7:09. So let's come back at 7:15 and we'll start out with the story swaps. All righty, well, welcome back and welcome to the story swap part of our gathering tonight. But before we get into our stories and the like, I have a handful of announcements. Get out your calendars, your notepads, whatever it takes to help you with your memory, because I've got a number of dates to put out there for you. Coming up on May 20th, which is Tuesday, Story Oli, and I believe they meet right down here in Olympia at the Brotherhood. They're gonna have their story swap, and the theme for their gathering is bugs. They get together and tell a story about bugs, and I can imagine that'll go a lot of different directions when you think about bugs there. There's gonna be a couple of things. For some reason, spring must bring out liars. There's gonna be a Liar's Tale Swap Fest sponsored by the Seattle Storytellers Guild. I don't have the exact date on that, but you can probably Google up Seattle Storytellers and get the date on that. And then on June 12th, there's another Liars contest, and it's from the story people of Clallam County. And so that one's, might want to get that on your calendar. So if you've got a good liar story, you got some good opportunities to tell there. Looking a little bit further out, Stories in the Park, Stories in the Dark, and that's one of our featured events that we really enjoy doing. And it's going to be held at the Squaxin Park, and it's going to be on, make sure I get this right, August 9th. Yep, Saturday, August 9th. The weather usually that time of year is just absolutely perfect for this kind of event. So we start out a little bit before sunset, tell our normal stories, and then after we take a break, and by then the sun's gone down, it's gotten kind of dark and maybe even a little creepy, and then we'll tell our scary stories. But it's open to everybody, so please show up. We've got a good lineup of storytellers, and I think there's always room for more. So if you're interested in volunteering, and that's a live event. But we don't do that on Zoom. We don't have the capacity or the capability out there to do that. So you got to come. Saturday, August 9th. Great time here in Olympia. And our next storytelling event is coming up on June 11th, Wednesday. So we meet the second Wednesday of every month, June 11th, and our opening teller is going to be Annie Coverly. Annie's with us here in the audience today. And our featured tellers are going to be Janice Alexander and Trish Anderson. So please join us for that. And that is available on Zoom, just like we're doing today. So a lot of good things there. If you want to learn a little bit more about us and our shameless plug for money, if you want to donate to our cause, you can go to our website. It's southtownstory.org. And on there, you can find a list of the activities and events that we have coming up. And it also, and past events, that's true. There's recordings of our past story swaps and some of the other events that we've had. So you can take a look at those and learn from those, or get some ideas for your next story on that. All righty. Well, I think that's everything I have for announcements. And again, thanks to our opening teller and featured tellers. And we're going to start out, we're going to go to India next. The power of Zoom. We had, it's about 8 o'clock in the morning there. And Shilpa, I'm sorry if I get your last name wrong, Shilpa Mehta, she has a handful of stories on, I think it's a YouTube channel that she tells, but she contacted us and asked if she could tell a story for us today. Shilpa Story Rack is her YouTube site. She's a passionate storyteller, and she has a firm belief in the power of stories. Sounds like she shares a common bond with all of us, as you can tell from our earlier stories. And she's from the northwest part of India. It's about 8 o'clock in the morning there, so she's just getting her day started. And with that, Shilpa, good morning. Over to you.
Hello, everyone. I hope I'm audible.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. So good morning, good evening from whichever part of the world you are joining. And yes, that's the power of Zoom, that I am logging in from India and sharing a story and listening also. So I am Shilpa Mehta, but in the storytelling fraternity, I'm known as Shilpa Story Rack. And today I'm going to tell you a story. And yes, like you rightly said that, yes, I do believe in the power of stories, and I think that stories should be shared. So this is a folktale from India, and it's called A Song and a Story. So long time ago, well, I think that's the way all the stories begin. So long, long time ago, in a small village in India lived a woman. She knew so many songs and so many stories. She used to sing and tell stories when she was young, but when she got married, life's responsibilities and other trivial things made her a bit irritated. She stopped sharing stories. She even stopped singing songs. And as a result of that, both the story and the song, they started feeling suffocated inside her. And one day, when this woman was sleeping with her mouth wide open, both the story and the song escaped. One of them took the shape of a pair of shoes and parked itself outside the house, and another one took the shape of a coat and hung itself on the peg. In the evening, when the husband came home and he saw the pair of shoes lying outside, somebody visiting my wife in my absence. And he comes inside and, a coat on the peg. His suspicions grew and he called out for his wife. Who's visiting? No one. No one. So then whose coat and shoes are those? I have no clue. Yes. You see, because the woman, she didn't have any idea. But the husband wasn't satisfied with her answer. They started arguing, and soon this argument took the shape of a very ugly quarrel. In a fit of rage, the husband took his blanket and left the house to go to the monkey god's temple. Well, let me tell you, monkey god is known as Lord Hanuman. And here, the wife was sitting all alone and wondering from where this coat and this pair of shoes came. No answer. And she lied down all alone in the house, thinking and thinking. She turned off the flame and went off to sleep. Now, during those days when all the flames were turned off, during those days they had those lanterns. I don't know whether you know. So there was a lantern, and in that you fill the oil to light the lamp. So when she turned off the lantern, all the flames, they would go and meet at the monkey god's temple. Wondering why? Well, to meet, to talk about the whole day affairs in their household, and to gossip. Well, who doesn't like to gossip? So this particular night, all the other flames from all the houses were there except for one. And when this flame came, one of the flames asked, "Hey, hi, why are you so late?" There was a quarrel in the house. Quarrel? Tell us, what was it all about? Ah, you know, the lady of the house, she knows so many songs, so many stories, but she never tells any story, nor she sings any song. Oh, so what happened? What happened? So today, when she was sleeping, both the story and the song escaped. One of them took the shape of a pair of shoes, and another one took the shape of a coat. And when the husband got home, he got suspicious and they started fighting and fighting and fighting. The story and the song, they took revenge, and the woman doesn't even know. Huh? Oh, really? Now the husband, who was sleeping under the blanket, heard the conversation and his suspicions got clear. By the time he went home, it was almost dawn. He went to his house and apologized to his wife. "I'm so sorry, dear, but why don't you tell me a story? And sing a song for me. Huh? What story? And what song are you talking about? I don't know. Well, because the woman had forgotten all the songs and the stories. So, my dear storyteller friends, if you know any song or any story, please keep sharing and sharing and sharing just the way I have shared. Because if you won't, the story and the song, they might take revenge. Thank you.
I love it. What a great story. So all you storytellers, don't keep it to yourself. Bad things will happen if you don't. So get out there and get your stories going. Thank you so much. And please do join us again. We meet, like I said, the second Wednesday every month, and Zoom makes the world pretty flat. And 8 o'clock, what a great way to start your morning. And what a great way for you to help us get into our evening. So thank you very much for joining us, for reaching out. So next up is John Berthold. And we've all heard John tell before. He tells stories mostly about his childhood in Alaska and what a cast of characters he has in his stories. And John, I don't know if that's what you're going to tell tonight, but I'm sure whatever you have for us is going to be wonderful.
Sure. Thank you, Greg. It's May. May is my favorite month. Mother's Day, my mother's birthday, my sister Blister's birthday, and my birthday.
Oh.
But my mother's the oldest. Now, about a week before she left this world, I sat by her bed and held her hand, and I tell stories. No, I didn't tell stories. It was kind of like confession. I told all the things I did wrong as a little boy. But you know what I learned that day? I learned that mothers' heads are designed and manufactured different than ours. They have eyes all the way around. They have ears that stick out here, here, and here. They have all the senses. She knew more about my story than I did, except for two. And one tonight is, I'm going to tell you. 1957, I was 11 years old. I was going to meet my girlfriend who I'd been seeing for about 2-3 months now at the matinee. I was excited. By the way, she's my wife too. I was pretty excited because I was going to make the big move of my lifetime. I was going to go steady. Now there's two ways to go steady. You can give a ring to a girl and she can put it around her neck. I couldn't afford a ring. Or you could put your hands together like this with her. Now, we have been doing it the Methodist way, you know, kind of like this. You hold hands like your mother when you walk downtown with her. Very boring. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to go steady. I wanted to put those fingers together, and the feeling was we go in there and they go up your arm into your heart. I mean, that's what love is about. Well, I was going to do that on the main feature tonight, which was, I can't remember the name of the show. I was so excited. Not a lazy river. Anyway, Bridge Over the River Kwai.
Yeah.
It was my favorite show then, and it is today. I was going to get out of the Methodist style and go into the steady style. Now, just before that show started, they had what they called the newsreel, and it showed little bits of news from all over the world. Now, I lived in a world of my own. I didn't need all that other. So that's usually when I got up and went and got us popcorn. But today, on this matinee, they had World War II soldiers teaching pigeons how to fly to different companies, and they would put messages on their feet, on their ankles, and they would fly off. Now, the Germans would not shoot at pigeons because that's a waste of ammunition. It was a great thing that the pigeons had going. Well, I started watching that and I forgot where I was and I went all the way through Bridge Over River Kwai and never went steady with Susan. But I had a plan. I was gonna go home and I was gonna train a pigeon. So we said goodbye, I ran home and I found a board in our basement this long. I ran up to my brother's bedroom. Now he was out in a logging camp working, so I could use his bedroom whenever he wasn't home. And I hooked it up to the window. Now, right after school on Monday, I ran home, opened the window, it was a slider. I slid it open, put some popcorn outside and waited and waited and waited. Now, my mother came home at 5. It was getting late. I couldn't afford her to find this pigeon in the house. I waited and I was just about ready to shut the window when this pigeon landed. It was a most beautiful pigeon. It had purple, violet, green, every color you imagine, every way. Turn her head. I call her and I called her Hazel because an old boy could be that beautiful. And she'd pick a piece up and then she'd walk. She'd walk. She put one paw inside. I was ready. She put another one in. I was ready. I needed that tail to get in. I was ready. The tail went in. Slam! I yelled. We're gonna start our training now. She didn't recognize my voice. She took off flying out of my brother's bedroom, down the hall, past my blister's bedroom, past my bedroom, and into a window.
Oh.
She hit the floor. There was poop, blood, and feathers everywhere. I almost got to her where she disappeared out of sight. She had gone down the stairs. Now, I don't know if she walked down, flew down, or fell down, but she was laying down there and wasn't moving. I got down there and just went to pick her up and she got up on her feet and flew again. Out from the back porch, through the kitchen. And I'm yelling at her at the top of my lungs. She's going into the living room and there's a big picture window in the front. She's doing about 300 miles an hour when she hit that window. Now there is real poop, real blood, and real feathers everywhere. I knew it was it. I knew it was burial. I reached down to pick her up. That thing got up and flew again to the end of the living room. Now, my mother had put some curtains up there, kind of like what nylon, women's nylons are like. There, you can see through them. Well, she got all tangled up and fell down. So I pulled the couch out, reached down and picked her up and looked in those big brown eyes, and there was no love there. We talked a little and I told her I had to put her outside, that my mom was coming home. And I had to clean up her mess. So we went out on the porch, then down the stairs, and there was a little landing by our basement door, and I set her there and said, "Go fly away, will you please?" I went back upstairs and tried to clean up. Now, have you ever taken a broom and tried to pick up a feather? They fly by themselves. I kept chasing that one feather all over. I finally gave up, got the vacuum cleaner because I could master all the machinery in our house. And I vacuumed and vacuumed. Then I opened up the drawers under the sink and grabbed a bottle of ammonia. And I poured it on this rag, and holy cow, that about knocked me out, and my hand was burning. But it didn't matter. I had to clean up the poop, everything that was laying out there. And I cleaned and I washed the windows, and they got a little smeared, but I got them all clean. And I heard the coming up the stairs. I put everything away and I stood there, and my mom comes through the door. "Hi, honey. How are you? How was your day?" "Fine, Mom." "Oh my goodness, did you break that bottle of ammonia?" "No, I just trying to help clean up." "Oh, well, let me change my clothes and open some windows and then we'll talk." She went in the other room and I said, "Mom, I have to go outside for a minute. I'll be right back." "Okay." I ran down to the landing where Hazel should have been, and all I see was some feathers. Then I hear this, and I look around. And I look up on the telephone pole. And there is a pigeon looking down at me. I couldn't tell, but I had a funny feeling it was Hazel. I started to smile, and all of a sudden I noticed something walking across the yard. It was Ralph, our next door neighbor's cat. He was huge. And out the side of his mouth was a little brown, blue, gray feathers, kind of like my dad had a Camel cigarette hanging out. He was walking around just smiling, that cat was. I told my mother that story, and she says, John, what do you think happened to that bird? I smiled and bent over and said, smiled again, thank you.
John, happy birthday. Thanks for sharing with us. So we learned a little bit about, there's a Methodist style for hand holding. Good to know. And that's news to me. I appreciate that. And poor Hazel wondered how she ended up. You'll have to share that with us sometime when we get somewhere else. So next up is Mitch. Mitch, I asked him what story he was going to tell, and he said, well, I'll just see what fits in and what moves us. So Mitch, let's see what moved you.
All right. I get to show off. My dad and John and I invented my all-terrain wheels finally. I've been talking about these for years, and I finally found this little garden wagon on online and picked it up.
Can you back up a little bit?
Yeah, I'm gonna back up. I just gotta turn this around. Yeah. Can you see the wheel? Can they see one at the back? Can they see the wheels too?
Moving shortly.
Oh, yeah, there.
There we go. There are the
There
wheels.
we go. See, they're a cool color. So all this talk about moms made me think about my mom. And one of the cool things about my mom is she couldn't remember stories or jokes. And the terrible thing for us was that meant that Dad never had to learn any new jokes. We always had to hear the same old jokes every single time. And he's gonna come back and deny all of this one day. My dad's come to visit us before, so he'll defend himself some other day. But my mom did have a really cool sense of humor though, and she used her sense of humor to teach us to pay attention, because she would hear a little snippet of a conversation and then that someone else was saying, and then she would comment on it, and it would be funny if you were paying attention to the same little bit she was. Well, one day this was really apparent because my friend and I went to dinner with my mom. We went to a place actually here in Olympia. She'd come over to visit, and we went into, it used to be called North's Chuck Wagon, a little buffet place. And as soon as we walked in, my mom says, well, what if we prefer they use a scoop like everyone else? And I thought, okay, this is a joke. And I nudged my friend. I was like, this is it. This is a joke. This is how my mom does her jokes. And so we had to look everywhere, and we had to look and pay attention and try to listen. Maybe she had heard something, and we looked everywhere and listened and tried to remember back anything we'd heard. And sure enough, on every single table, it said, hand-dipped ice cream. And my mom's reply was, can't they just use a scoop like other people do? So that was my mom's sense of humor. And I inherited some of it, which is how this story came about. It's kind of grown over the years, and it's kind of fun. But I blame my mom because she's not here to defend herself. She actually passed last year. But it's about my parenting skills. You'll soon find out that I don't have any. I did not inherit that from her. Anyway, this was all down in Wyoming where I'm living now. And you have to know that certain things with my hands and my body, certain things just I do things weird. I make strange motions when I get up you know, I'll lean into people's personal bubbles to get up, and you know, I'm not trying to do anything. It's just how it works. And so what happened was this one day I was at the grocery store, and I'm trying to reach a gallon of milk. Now, to get my fingers to twist into the handle around a gallon of milk, it takes a full body motion. So I'm holding the door open, you know, the glass door open this way, and I'm turning my whole body like this. And this big old butt of mine knocked something over. And I knew that because it started crying. That's something that I knocked over, started crying. And I quickly turned around to see what happened, what I had knocked over. And apparently that's when my butt took out the rest of the poor kid's family. Just dead, all of them gone. It was sad. And it was weird. And after the accident reports and all of the paperwork, it turns out in Wyoming, if you kill a kid's family, you become his father. And so I found out his name is Johnny, and we started for home. Now, the other thing you have to watch out for in Wyoming are herds of animals that just randomly run across the field, run across the road right in front of you. And this was back in the day. I stole this line, but I really like it. This was back in the day when your airbags were the back of your dad's arm. And so Johnny and I are driving home, and I'd gotten up to about 60, as you do in those parts, because everything is 30 miles from everything else. And so we're driving along, and one of those herds of deer jumps across into the roadway, and I slam on my brakes, and I put my little arm out, and nothing happens. Johnny flies right past it somehow, and he's out the window, and he's landed on the back of a deer. And I thought, oh my goodness, what do I do now? I'm responsible for this boy. And then I think back to the accident reports and the things that I had learned. And I said, wait, no, I'm still in Wyoming. They're his dad now. And so they flew off, and Johnny was screaming. I think it was joy. I really like to think it was joy. So Johnny's screaming, holding onto the back of a deer. And because I'm a terrible 1 day, 1 hour, one something father, I forgot about him until years later when the internet was a thing, and I looked him up, and I sent him a little email and said, hey, do you remember me? And he did remember me, and he told me some news that he had been in charge of he had he'd created a whole agricultural equipment company. Little Johnny Deere did really good for himself. And he sent me a sample. So that's my story tonight, and I'm sticking to it.
Mitch, I don't think too many of us will think about hand-dipped ice cream the same way that we once did.
Right.
Thanks for changing. And Wyoming. But you never know. Wyoming's the Wild West, and in some ways it does make sense. But thanks for sharing.
Right.
Great story, and I like the green and yellow right in on your green and yellow on your little card there. But thanks for that. Well, next up, we're going to go back to Zoom land. And we're going to ask Megumi to share a story with us tonight. So Megumi, I'm not sure what your story is, but we'll send it over to you, and it's all yours.
Hey, do I go on the main screen or?
Yeah, you're on.
I am. Okay. Well, hi, everybody. I'm calling in from San Francisco Bay Area. I love the clouds there. Over here, it's not quite cloudy. So today I have a story about a man named Art that I got to interview. You know, I'm embarrassed to say that I went to college and took ethnic studies, and they talked about Japanese American internment camps, but all I cared about was grades. So I just memorized facts so that I could get a good grade on the test. And that was that. And then in 1995, okay, I graduated in 81. So 1995, much later, I met a woman with whom I was exchanging World War II stories. And I said, I can't believe it. You know, like my Caucasian grandfather fought the Japanese, and my Japanese grandfather fought the Americans. And he died fighting for the emperor, but my American grandfather and his brothers, they all came back unscathed and had a successful military career. I mean, that's so weird, right? And this woman said, well, let me tell you about my story. And she told me about her grandparents coming over from Japan around the turn of the century and how they couldn't become American citizens. There were racist laws. And so when World War II broke out, the American government said, hey, anybody of Japanese descent, we're going to imprison them. I'm saying it in a shortcut way. There's a lot more details to that, but for the purposes of this story, it was like, oh my gosh, really? Even though I had gotten an A- in my ethnic studies class and had, you know, facts and figures like 120,000 Americans residents of Japanese descent were imprisoned. You know, I had like those words, 1944, 1945, and so on and so forth. I hadn't met somebody who told me about their family. Well, in the late 1990s, I was able to interview over 50 people who were of Japanese descent who were sent to these camps with their families. Just ridiculous. But the good news was that in 1988, a law was passed, and after lots of hard work and congressional hearings, Japanese Americans, each person who were in the camps got a check, a reparation check of $20,000. So I thought, this is great. I'm going to tell Japanese American internment stories about how our government can make big mistakes, huge, terrible mistakes, ruin people's lives. But if you go through the proper due process, our government is created in such a way that we can air our grievances, be heard, and Americans get to enjoy things like this. Now, some of you are maybe thinking about the African Americans and how they want reparations, and people who are Native Americans, they haven't gotten reparations, and so on. But there's another branch of the story to the Japanese American experience. And I met a man named Art Shibayama. His family didn't immigrate from Japan to the United States. His family immigrated to Peru. And in fact, thousands of Japanese were immigrated to Latin American countries for opportunities. Art's grandparents were so successful. They had a really great dry goods store and they were wealthy. They had a fancy car. Art was the oldest of 8 children, and there's a picture of him with his 7 siblings or 6 siblings. The last one hadn't been born yet, all standing in front of this amazing large car. The driver probably took the picture. They had hired a full-time driver, and they had servants and such, and they were doing great in the city of Callao in Peru. Well, when World War II broke out, the Latin American countries were not involved in fighting with the Allies, maybe some were. The American government wanted Americans who were still trapped in Japan to come back. So they made a deal with 13 Latin American countries, starting with Bolivia, Colombia, and so on, including Panama and Peru, and said, give us residents of your countries who are of Japanese descent, and we can use them as hostages, exchange them for our citizens trapped in Japan. Does that make sense? It's kind of wonky, but that's what happened. His grandparents, who were these successful businessmen, people, were the first to be taken away, and against their will, they were quote unquote deported to Japan after a stop in the United States. So Art, who was then known as Arturo, was really close to his grandparents, loved him. But after that, he never saw them again the rest of his life, because people who left Japan, who were forcibly deported to Japan, didn't have happy family members saying, hi, welcome back to our starving village. We will feed you and make sure you're healthy. He lost, his family completely lost touch with the grandparents. And then in 1944, so the war had been going on for a while. The authorities in Peru came and got his father, his mother, the entire family, put him on, and with other families, Japanese Peruvians, they were taken to New Orleans through the Panama Canal as prisoners. And then when they landed in New Orleans, they were all sprayed with DDT naked in public, and then were taken to Crystal City, Texas, which was a camp for enemy aliens. So it wasn't just people of Japanese descent. There were Italians and Germans there too. Now you can imagine Arturo and his family. They spoke Spanish because they were in Peru, spoke Japanese because that's their heritage, but no English. And for a while, they didn't put a lot of effort into learning English because they thought they would be able to go home to Peru. But the Peruvian government said, no, we don't want them back. And of course, the Japanese government didn't want extra mouths to feed. So they were in this really strange place with their passports having been taken by the American government. Their status, stateless, their status, illegal immigrants. Illegal immigrants, when they were kidnapped by in the cooperation between the United States and their own country in Latin America. Well, if this is strange enough, once Arturo turned 19, he was drafted into the U.S. Army, even though he was an illegal immigrant and stateless. And they didn't ask him about his status. And he served with the U.S. Army and occupied Europe. when 1988 came and Japanese Americans won this landmark ruling, and a couple years later, if they were still alive, got their checks, the Latin American Japanese or Japanese Latin Americans were not entitled to those checks and the apology letter signed by President Reagan. Oh, wait a minute, sorry. Bush, because they were illegal immigrants at the time of the incarceration. Arturo became an activist and he testified many times about the injustice that was done to his family. In more recently, Japanese Peruvians who were still alive got checks for something much less than $20,000 as an apology. I think of a couple $1,000. And Arturo died without the justice for the Japanese Peruvians. So when I think of what's going on now with immigrants, this is nothing new. Crazy things happen and everybody can point at each other for oversight and lawlessness and injustice. Well, I want to end on a happy note. Art and his family relocated to Chicago, where they were part of the Japanese American community in Chicago. And I think, do we have anybody here? No, okay. One of the members in Asia, she still lives near Chicago. And one year, I think in 1970 something, when so much snow fell that Arturo, he said he got on the roof and started shoveling snow on one side of the house. And when he was done, he took a little break and went to the other side of the house, the roof. And when he finished, it had been snowing so hard, the first side that he had completely cleared was again packed with snow. And he said, at that point, I'm leaving, I'm going to California. And he moved to San Jose and he did what he always wanted to do, which was to own a gasoline station. And he owned a gasoline station in San Jose, California for many, many years with his lovely wife, Betty, and 2 of their children. And that's the story of Arturo, who I had the privilege of interviewing. Thank you.
Thank you for that story, and thanks for wrapping it up for us today on a positive note. Yeah, immigration, there's so many stories out there, and the way we treat and handle things, sometimes with good intentions, sometimes with bad, but nonetheless something we need to be mindful of, and as we move forward. Well, I want to thank everybody. We're a little bit over time, but thank you to all of our tellers, and we hope you have a good evening, and join us again next Wednesday or next month on the 2nd Wednesday. So thanks and good night.